Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Druitt, Development Program Manager for the Residential Tax Incentive Program, otherwise known as the CRA program or Tax Abatement Program. For those watching remotely or on the recording, this is a convening of the Housing Council, which oversees this program. It is a requirement under Ohio statute that a housing council oversee a CRA program. The statutory requirement that this council oversees is to inspect properties that have been abated and to allow us to issue letters to property owners whose properties have fallen out of compliance by way of physical deterioration on the exterior of the properties. And so we're here to perform that statutory requirement to make sure that tax abated properties continue to be kept in good shape. But we also use this meeting as an opportunity to educate the Housing Council on the other activities of this program. In attendance, we have members of the Housing Council, Janice Kaye-Shanklin, Stephen Gladman, and Lois Carson. Today, we will first give a quick overview of the Housing Council itself. We will also discuss the affordability policy as it interacts with this program and recent updates we legislated last year, and that will come into effect this year. We will give a report on each of the CRAs, both activity last year as well as some activity that's occurred this year. And then we'll go into the visual inspection findings and then any discussion needed thereafter. So first, as I mentioned, this is the roster of the Housing Council as it stands today. Maud Hill and Deborah Diggs are absent from this meeting. One thing I do want to highlight, and we may come back to this should we have time, is that the Housing Council itself gets to appoint 2 members to this board. So as you can see, 2 appointees come from the mayor's office, 2 come from city council, and 1 from the Development Commission. There are 2 blanks here that come from the Housing Council yourselves. So we can return to that item of discussion should time allow, but I want to highlight that one as a potential item of discussion. So while this program does incentivize residential construction by way of providing the tax abatement as an incentive, both for new build and for rehab, the city has gone further to ensure that more properties that we are abating incorporate affordability. So in 2018, the city legislated its first round of affordability requirements. We divide our CRAs into 3 categories. Market ready, which is the most economically successful of the CRAs, and we want to make sure that affordable options are being included in those higher rent neighborhoods. Ready for revitalization, which is our middle tier neighborhoods that are on the upswing. We still want to see some affordability there, and so we legislated that in 2018. Ready for opportunity are neighborhoods that need some more help, and so at the time of 2018, there were no affordability requirements because we wanted to incentivize as much residential investment as we could get. Last year, we legislated new requirements that are more stringent than the 2018 requirements. These next couple slides give a high level of what has changed, but to put this into a couple of high-level bullet points, previously in the 2018 policy, which is what we often call it here, for market ready and for ready for revitalization, for multifamily projects, we required 10% of units set aside to those making 100% or less of area median income, and an additional 10% set aside to those making 80% or lower of area median income. We have upped those requirements, so as you can see in this comparison chart for market ready specifically, instead of 10 at 80 and 10 at 100, it's now 10 at 60 and 10 at 80, so dropping each AMI category by 20 points. And there's a new option to offer 30% of units to those making 80% or lower of AMI. So the way we've talked about this is that we want developers to go either deeper or wider with their affordability. We are also implementing affordability requirements for single family, which before did not exist. And so for market ready and for ready for revitalization, soon it'll be a requirement that a homeowner make 120% or less of area median income in order for that single family home to benefit. What I've just stated is relevant for the market ready, the upper tier, and ready for revitalization, which is that middle tier. Ready for opportunity is going to be a little bit different. Like I mentioned, in the prior policy, there were no affordability requirements at all. Ready for opportunity areas right now are the Linden area and Franklinton, for context. We are starting to phase in some affordability, 10% at 80, 10% at 100. So not quite as stringent as the other tiers, but we're starting to bake this in. We also updated the fee in lieu option. So this was an option developers could utilize instead of providing the affordable units. So in the prior policy is being phased out for the market ready or ready for revitalization projects. One could provide fee in lieu of $5,000 per affordable unit otherwise required. And that money would go toward a housing community development corporation or the Affordable Housing Trust. That way, they're still supporting affordable housing in our region. We have upped that greatly with the new policy. So going back to market ready, you'll see one little caveat about market ready too. The market ready fee in lieu was this calculation you see on the left, 150% of the difference between the market rent and the affordable rent. It was an option that was never utilized, and so we are going to bring in an affordability requirement that's more simple to use and to understand, but it will still be an expensive option to utilize. So in the policy being phased in, it'll be $32,000 plus an inflation escalation per affordable unit otherwise required. For revitalization, this is where that $5,000 figure is relevant. Instead of the $5,000 being phased out, it'll soon be $16,000 plus an inflation escalation. For Ready for Opportunity, since there was no affordability before, it was a moot point. Now that there will be affordability being phased in, we're keeping that $5,000 and adding in an inflation escalator. One other requirement we are phasing in is that the units that are set aside to be affordable must be distributed across the project and also unit type. So if a development, say, has a mix of 3 to 1 bedrooms, one must apportion those unit types equitably across the affordable units and also make sure that they're distributed physically throughout the building. Before I move on, are there any questions about our affordability policy, both the pre and the post 22, or anything else in regards to this area of work?
Jimmy, you had a question on the fee in lieu option. The way this is written, is this a one-time payment? You read this as one-time payment, but then you have plus the CPI inflation adjusted at every August 1st. So is that an ongoing annual payment, inflationary payment, or is that just the one-time calculation of 5,000 plus CPI plus 5%?
Thanks for that question. It is a one-time payment. So the way that inflation escalator comes into the picture here is that, for example, the Ready for Revitalization at 16,000, that's how it was as we legislated last year. Now come August 1 of this year, we'll add in that inflation escalator, and that'll be the new fee in lieu for projects that come in after August 1, but it is a one-time payment. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. So this is the map of all residential CRAs as it existed on December 31st at the close of last year. As you can see, these are color-coded. So the ones that are in yellow are the Ready for Opportunity CRAs, that's Franklinton and Linden. For the Ready for Revitalization CRAs, which are the blue ones and the middle tier, there's quite a number in that category, so you'll see them scattered throughout. And then the market ready tier is the green, and you'll see a few of those scattered about. There's also the legacy CRAs. These work a bit different because they are pre-1994 CRAs with the exception of Easton, which is a unique case. But for the pre-94s, there's only a certain number of times one can legislatively amend these before they lose their status. And so for that reason, because they are limited by how much we can tweak them, we were not able to incorporate affordability by act of legislation. Any questions about the map? And welcome, Maud. So I'll turn it over to Mark Lundeen. He's going to give a presentation about the downtown CRA.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Mark Lundeen, I'm the Economic Development Administrator for the City of Columbus. We're the office that administers the downtown CRA. As Jeremy indicated, it is a pre-1994 CRA that includes both residential and commercial tax abatement. We've operated the CRA similarly since modification 2013. And obviously, it's been in place for a long time. We had, a limited amount of activity on the downtown CRA last year, as you see. We're listing 8 new CRA files and 3 certified applications with the CRA. So slower year than normal. I do want to note on the downtown CRA, while we're seeing a transition of more residential projects in the pipeline that we should see hit temporary certifications either this year or the following year. We are also seeing a number of residential abatements expire. Some of the first ones that were done under the original expanded CRA in the early 2000s are expiring and going on to the full tax rolls. So, obviously have lived their life, served their purpose, and now are returning to the full tax rolls. So, in short, I think activity downtown was slower last year than we anticipate. Normally, I think we'll see an uptick in residential this year and next year, and certainly hope that we get into kind of an equilibrium where as properties expire, we're also adding new properties into the downtown area. With that, I'll take any questions on the downtown CRA. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. This next slide is a high level of active abatements across all the CRAs. One piece of feedback I got from the Housing Council last year was that, let me provide some context here. There is a nuanced difference between the amount of investment we are abating as we certify it as a city versus what the county recognizes when they implement the abatement. And so while we have good data on the amount of investment that we say is abatable, that is a different number than what the county has decided is abatable. And so one difference from this sheet compared to last year is that for the value of active abatements, that's one of the columns toward the middle there, this is reflective of what is truly active on the Franklin County Auditor's rolls. They release a nice large incentive detail sheet every year. And so the value of investment that is abated under this program, according to the Franklin County Auditor, is approximately $1.4 billion. Now that is a value of the structure, it's value of the investment that is not reflective of the actual tax revenue that is abated. And if you look with greater detail as to which CRAs are seeing more activity than others, you'll notice that Wineland Park is the highest abated CRA at about $378 million. Not too far behind that is Short North at $271 million. You'll see Fifth by Northwest, 158, and you'll see a bunch of them that have zero. because they are newer CRAs. You'll see 161 has 0. You'll see Cleveland Avenue has 0. So these are CRAs that are pretty recent, and that's why you see no data there. Are there any questions on this sheet or this data? All right, moving on. So I'm going to give a quick overview of all the legislative changes to the CRAs that occurred last year. One thing I'm not going to put on the board here is the legislation that incorporated the new affordability requirements, because that would have been one piece of legislation per CRA. And I think it's sufficient to say that every CRA incorporated the new affordability requirements back to legislation. So what you're going to see here is any CRA that expanded or receded its boundary. So we're going to talk more about boundary changes that occurred in 2022. So first we have AC Humco. This is on the west side of the more general Short North area. This was a smaller CRA that hugged the river a little more closely, and so we expanded it to fill in the gaps in the neighborhood, and we wanted to provide this abatement to more homeowners. So this is one expansion we did last summer. Far West Broad, this is a CRA that we created at the end of 2021. It was the first CRA I was here to help create. We expanded it pretty far to the east to incorporate some new projects. So two projects that are going to benefit from this expansion are Cherry Blossom, which is from National Church Residences. It's a 55-unit senior housing development. And also Scioto Creek by Ascent Development, which is going to be 264 units. So this will bring some more housing units to the far west side, include some good affordability in this area. Next is 161 CRA. This is around 161 Sinclair, Morse Road. We did a little expansion to the north of East Dublin-Granville Road. Those little jettisons you see crossing Dublin-Granville Road. This will help to support a property at 888 East Dublin-Granville Road, which is in cooperation with the Community Shelter Board and the YMCA. This one's unique. It's going to be 180 units, and it's going to be geared more towards those that are experiencing homelessness or those struggling with addiction. It's going to have on-site services to help with those circumstances. Another expansion we did in a similar style to the prior one is Cleveland Avenue CRA. We added the east side of Cleveland Avenue there, which includes a number of parcels. This is going to help support 252 new units. And again, these units are all going to have affordability requirements. And a number of these are going to be light tech deals or even have more affordability above and beyond what we would otherwise require. And this will also bring the incentive to more homeowners, both in the 161 example and the Cleveland Avenue example. So properties on the east side of Cleveland Avenue in this case will be able to benefit from the program too. Southside CRA, this is another smaller expansion. This is going to support a project at 33 Morrill. It's 46 units. It's a light tech deal, so those 46 units are set to be at 60% or lower of AMI based on the recent information I have. Now, Linden, these next batch of amendments are about reseeding the boundary or some boundary tweaks. What we noticed at the tail end of 21, beginning of 22, is that a number of the CRAs along the Fifth Avenue corridor were accidentally overlapping each other. So that's not an inherent problem, but we wanted to make the map clearer. So Linden, we just reseeded the boundary a little bit to only cover the north side of Fifth Avenue. The south side of Fifth Avenue is still covered by Milo Grogan. CRA, we left that one intact, so properties on the south side of Fifth Avenue still get to benefit from the program. Wineland Park, similar story. Wineland Park bled over a little bit to the south side of Fifth Avenue, so by virtue of wanting to make the map a little bit clearer, we just reseeded it to only cover the north side of Fifth Avenue, except for that portion you see in the bottom left. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Now, that's all that happened in 2022. We've already made a couple changes that became effective this year. So the process of creating or amending a CRA, we have to do legislation by city council, then the state needs to certify it. So these two changes, we legislated in December, and they became certified in February. So one is a new CRA, Riverside CRA. It's up near Dublin, but still City of Columbus, of course, along Sawmill Road on the west, Hayden Run Road. This is a bunch of residential neighborhoods. This is also going to support a new build project, which is a former athletic club. It's a dilapidated site, and there'll be new housing on the site, 203 units, 10% set aside to 60% of AMI, 10% set aside to 80% of AMI. And then Fifth by Northwest, we did a little expansion here to support more housing development.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah.
West. Why is the boundary not consistent with the boundary between Grandview Heights and Columbus along Third Avenue instead of Third Avenue? All those properties to the south of Third Avenue, along Third Avenue, those are all in Columbus, but they're not in the CRA.
So Fifth by Northwest is unique in a number of ways. One is that the outer boundary does, on the face of it, seem to include some non-city territory. That could be Grandview, that could also be Clinton Township. That's not an inherent problem because our legislation makes it very clear that only parcels within that boundary that are also part of the City of Columbus are eligible to benefit. And so sometimes we see this as a matter of making the map clear. Other maps have this dynamic. Southeast CRA, as an example, has a lot of township within its outer boundary. So that's one dynamic going on here.
I guess my question is,
yeah.
why did you exclude all those parcels that are in the city that are on Third Avenue? The boundary for Columbus and Grandview Heights is behind those buildings. So you have buildings right across the street with the same characteristic that are in it, and then you have a half a block that's in the city of Columbus that is not in the CRA.
Right. So this CRA was initially created, I believe, in 2011, which precedes me. And so I don't have the full story as to why this particular boundary was created. Rita, do you happen to have any insight as to the original creation of the boundary?
Sure I do, but I don't recall it right now.
But to your point, there is not one set of rules as to how we shape a CRA. One thing we have done with recent CRAs in the past couple of years is we tie them to the census tract. And so this is not going to be relevant for Fifth by Northwest, but one's like Riverside, the one I just showed you that we created recently. We try to make the CRA reflective of the census tract. That way, we're better able to record demographic data. We're able to better collect economic data. This is one that is older, and so the older CRAs tend to be more neighborhood specific. So this one is also the Neary CRA, which is more neighborhood specific. Southside has the same dynamic. And so while we can't explain the particular reason why it was cut off the way it was, based on precedent, it may have been whoever was in making decisions at the time decided this is the case of neighborhood, this is where the CRA will be reflective of the neighborhood. Any other questions about the 2022 or 2023 boundary adjustments?
I did have a question on 161.
Uh-huh.
You said that these shapes up here, the little going across, I guess, going north on 161 are for developments for, can you repeat that? I'm sorry. I think it was like some shelters for drug rehabilitation.
Yeah,
And those in fact in existence today, or is that something that's pending?
So I believe the site as it existed, or probably exists right now before they begin construction, I believe it's a hotel, to my recollection. And so what the developer wants to do here is to, instead of the hotel being on that parcel, have this be more continuous housing for those at-risk populations. And so the abatement is one tool we can use to help make such projects economical. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions on that piece? All right, so moving on. This is a 3-part spreadsheet. I could not fit it onto one page based on the data that I thought was important to be in front of you. But these are the CRA agreements that we executed in 2022. And for context, when we have a multifamily project go through this program that is required to provide affordability, this is one piece of documentation we get in line that beholds them to provide the affordability that they agreed to. And so these are the agreements that we executed last year. This does not mean that all these units are built and live. They are all in various stages of construction. But what I want to share with you is that amongst all these all these agreements, we have 94 units set to 60% or lower of AMI, 122 units set to 80% or lower of AMI, and 29 set to 100% or lower of AMI. We also have 92 LIHTC units, and when you take together the LIHTC units and the units we're requiring, altogether, that's 317 affordable units that we're helping to bring online. You do also see here the fee in lieu information. So for 2022 agreements, developers are committing to provide $700,000 worth of fee in lieu. And this represents about $313 million worth of investment. Happy to answer any questions about this chart.
When you do the monitoring for affordability compliance, is that just a point in time in a year, or is there ongoing, can you explain how you do that?
Yeah, so we are required that by every March, developers must submit to us their compliance information. So we want to see all their units that are leased up, how many of them did you apportion to affordable users? Did you comply with the agreement? Did you set aside enough units as you agreed to? One exciting thing about this, and I should have had a slide just on this, but up until the end of last year, this program was completely paper-based. And starting January 1, we went fully electronic. And so this is the first year we started getting electronic reports back. This is helping us administer the program and also helping the user experience, both for developers and also single-family users. But to get more to your point, yes, once per year, they must submit to us all documentation that certifies that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we're in that process right now. Any other questions on the sheet? Now, here is the main item to discuss today, and this is the inspection data from this year. So in January, our housing tech team braved the cold of January and end of February to go out and inspect every property that has an active abatement in this program. So they do not inspect properties whose abatements have expired. There's no need to inspect them anymore for this purpose. But you'll see a summary at the bottom here where we have details of how many properties we inspected per CRA. And so the information you see above is properties that our housing tech team found to have some sort of physical deterioration on the exterior. You'll see toward the right under the issues column are the specific issues identified, things such as peeling paint or perhaps some front steps have deteriorated, cracked window panes. These things do matter because we want to make sure that properties are being upkept if they're going to benefit from this abatement. And how we handle these is that once you authorize us to try to remedy this, we will mail out, and if I have information, do so electronically as well, send out letters stating this is what you agreed to under this program, this is the issue we found, and here's the date by which you need to submit evidence to us that it's been remedied. I do want to note one project here. It's in the second row, 258, 256 South Souder. That is one that came up in the inspection last year. They did submit documentation to me suggesting that they did remedy it, but in our due diligence, we always double check these things. And we found this property still does not seem to be up to snuff. So this is one we're coming back to request another repair letter, but we're going to make it a little more forceful. We want to make sure that they are submitting, say, invoicing or other harder documentation showing that they are working on that particular property. Yeah.
How long do you give them to remedy these issues?
Yeah, so last year we gave them about 6 months to remedy it. We haven't discussed the timeline this year, but if we're going by precedent, we'll probably do 6 months again this year.
When they don't follow that directions like the one you just spoke of, how many times are you going to send a letter saying, step your game up?
Right. So this is the first one in my tenure. So I joined the city back in September of '21. This is the first property I had seen fail this inspection twice. And so we will send another letter out. But again, we're going to make it a little more forceful, not just submit documentation to us, which they did, but just it wasn't up to snuff. And so we want to see invoicing. We want to see much harder evidence that they are trying to work on the property.
Thank you.
The individuals that are going out and checking these, do they ever set up an appointment with the owners to go over any of these issues? Like, you know, say if they're not doing what needs to be done, is there then a sort of face-to-face consultation where, you know, these are the things that need to be done, or pictures given to them? What exactly do they receive so that they know these are what our expectations
Yeah.
are?
So we don't do in-person meetings, or at least we haven't up until now. It's something that I always am amenable to doing, but the housing tech team does not by default do that. In the letters we send out, we do include resources. So we do offer toward the bottom of these letters in the standard form resources if they need financial assistance to upgrade their property. We give them some resources and folks to reach out to help them with that. My contact information is also in those letters. So we don't want to go into this wielding a stick. We want to also help them if they need help.
So Jeremy, they don't receive a code violation? This is just a letter informing them there could be a violation, but you don't actually issue them a code violation and require them to comply?
Right, because these findings are a little bit different than a proper code violation. This is what the Ohio Revised Code, for the purposes of CRAs, would consider to be a situation that needs to be remedied. That's a slightly different thing than what the city might find code-worthy. And so while there could be overlap here, it's not necessarily a one-to-one.
Jeremy, how do you handle seniors who are not in compliance?
I have not interacted with a senior in this particular context, but one thing that did happen last year was there was one property that was vacant in the Linden CRA. And so we wanted to be a little more careful with that one. We don't want to yank a tax abatement if a family member were to, say, inherit the home or another situation. So that particular home is inhabited now. It looks like someone bought it and rehabbed it. I saw it myself, actually. So it is a livable property. Someone is inhabiting it now. But so I can't speak specifically to seniors, but I will say we do take into consideration these special circumstances and make sure that we're guiding people to helping people along, I should say.
Based on the ownership, a significant number of these are rental properties. Do you ever attempt, when you have an outside violation, attempt to make contact with the current resident and see if there's interior violations as well?
So as far as interior violations, for the strict purposes of the CRAs, we are only required to inspect the exterior, and so we don't go to the extent of interior. We do also, last year, when I sent these letters out, I did send them both to the actual address as well as a mailing address if there were a different owner listed as a mailing address on the Fayette County Auditor's website. That way, it hits multiple points. But for purposes of this program, we don't go to the extent of interior work. So if there are no other further questions about this list, what we would be asking here is the authorization to issue said letters to this list of properties. So unless there's any dissent about any particular one of these, we can talk about any one of these individually.
I would move to authorize that all these be contacted and notified of the violation and asked to correct.
Is that in the form of a motion? I second.
All right, hearing no other objections, then we shall move forward on that front. Thank you.
You might want to ask for a vote.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All nays, abstentions? So 4 yeses. Thank you. So while we have some time, let's rewind back to the Housing Council list. So as I mentioned, you do have the ability to appoint 2 members to this board chosen by yourselves. And so we can talk more about that offline through email or similar, but I wanted to open this conversation up. If you have any particular folks in mind or any institutions, organizations in mind that might be a good fit for the board, please do let me know. Appointees do need to be authorized by City Council. I believe that's still true for these particular appointees. So any recommendation I might get would need to be vetted, and it would need to be a formal City Council action. But I just want to bring that all to your attention. Any questions or further discussion you want to have on this point?
I just have a question. What process was used in the past? Were those positions filled previously?
It has been so long ago since they have been filled that I couldn't tell you.
Because in my tenure, I didn't even know they existed, so. Thank you.
So this concludes the presentation materials I had for you. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss, whether it's the affordability, whether it's the inspection process, how we manage the program, anything at all? If not, then we can conclude the meeting. I'm not certain if we need a proper vote on that. Doesn't hurt? All right. Would any of you wish to motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Abstentions? Nays? That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.